All right, so today we're going to break into the antics of Mr. Gensler and what he's up to. Which case is he going to lose next? Is he going to be in with Coinbase? How this plays out into the broader crypto markets, and give you guys an update on all that good stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holding of these new not securities, you can go over to their website, check it out. They've got everything from crypto, gold, silver, all of which you can put into an existing IRA that you might have started there. If you have an IRA already, you can roll it over into this platform. The cool thing here is that there's no monthly fees. You can actually do all of your self-directed trading. You just have a small fee for each one of those, but no fees monthly for you guys. So make sure and check it out. And guess what? They were one of the first to relist XRP. So you can actually go in and put XRP in your IRA. Pretty cool stuff. Click the link down below. It does help the channel out. Let's get into a couple of points today. And I want to start with Ritchie Torres because Ritchie Torres, I think, has become a little bit fed up with Mr. Gensler. I'll jump over here. Here is the article. Torres asking the SEC to reconsider his crusade against crypto in the wake of the Ripple ruling, and a couple of things from within that statement. In the letter addressed to the SEC chair, Rep. Torres basically says, hey, I'm writing to inquire if the SEC intends to come to terms with the folly of the commission's crusade against crypto assets in light of the latest decision by Judge Torres. And that is a pretty big statement because, needless to say, regulation by enforcement has had a dreadful day in court. Man, he's just really kind of digging into Gensler, his new nemesis here. The ruling reinforces that the regulatory agencies are not jury and judge and executioner when it comes to digital assets. We've said that all along. I think a lot of people have already kind of figured that out, but it was just a matter of time. That I don't know why it took so long, but I knew it was just a matter of time for all this happened. That said, it's only a first step. Appeals will almost certainly follow, and even this ruling doesn't address many other important issues. The representative urges the SEC to reconsider the use of the Howey test. As the summary judgment points out, it places too much emphasis on the need to prove that a presence of an investment contract is there. Torres also, the doctrine says, as I call it, holds that crypto assets are not securities in themselves, but can be sold as part of an investment contract, which does or do qualify as security under the Howey test. And then he basically ends up here with, I look forward to finding out how the SEC will reassess its regulatory assault on crypto assets in light of this doctrine. And he goes on his Twitter, and he does reveal the letter, so you can go in to Rep. Ritchie. If you don't follow him on Twitter, go over there and zoom in on that a little for you guys, Rep. Ritchie. But a couple of things there. You can go right into the letter from and to Chair Gensler and where they're basically pulling all this data from. But really, his statement of them getting to that last point there, which is the one that is most important. I look forward to finding out how the SEC will reassess its regulatory assault. So all that being said, there's a lot here because this gets into a few things with not only where Gensler has been, because now he's got a loss on his record, and though he's kind of claiming a win, and technically there is a win there because there was a securities violation between institutional capital and what Ripple was doing. Most likely that's going to get down to a settlement or at least some sort of arrangement. And we'll talk about that in a second. Eleanor Terrett also made a statement here. It says, quite remarkable the level of divide between the leading Dems and Republicans when it comes to the SEC Gov. And of course, that being Chair Gensler. Republicans like Rep. Ann Wagner are critical and dissatisfied, while Democrats like Brad Sherman are full of praise. So you do have, and we've showed you a lot of the hearings which we've done. If you haven't checked those videos out, by the way, go down into our playlist right now. There's a whole slew of videos in here. This will catch you up on everything that's been happening in Congress and really within the policymakers of what they're framing up for coming up this month on most likely a vote on digital assets. This really is good timing because this will not allow Gensler to try to do anything to sabotage that. But I would be on the lookout because he's going to be a little bit vindictive here, I think, and I think it's going to be something that will play forward. In that light, I want to play a clip for you from Yahoo that has Gensler on, and they kind of hijack him a little bit. Take a look.
Switching gears, I want to ask you about crypto. There you go, Jennifer.
You didn't think I was going to let you off the hook, Chair Gensler, did you? All right, so last week we got a major ruling from the Southern District of New York on Ripple. How does this ruling change your approach, if at all, your abilities when it comes to regulating crypto and specifically crypto exchanges?
Okay, our approach has been the same. It's about protecting investors, and in terms of the decision, we're still taking a look at it. We're pleased with how the courts addressed itself to that a token for institutional investors is a security, how they address themselves to fair notice, disappointed in other aspect about retail investors, but we're still taking a look at that and considering it.
So clearly not an action plan right now with Gensler. There's been some speculation that there's going to be some kind of, alternative route that might happen. We had met a lawman talking about this on our show, and there appears to be some difficulty with that, the strategy-wise, because once a judgment has been put in place, it does present a little bit of a roadblock for the SEC going forward. Interesting to me is that this really does put an interesting weight on those who are filing on tokens that are going into institutional capital, because it will pretty much preclude them, if they're not going to file it with the SEC as a security, of institutional capital getting in on that. And that's one of the things that VCs will now lose the opportunity to get into. So more on that. We've talked about it a little bit. We'll probably break that down for you guys. I want to go over and kind of continue the narrative here, because this is getting into some interesting times for not only the SEC, but how this applies to other cases that are rolling in and happening right now, including Coinbase. Here's the judge, though, suggesting it's time for the SEC to settle with Ripple following this XRP win. We'll call it a win. But this is Sarah Netburn, who now has the case, has directed Securities and Exchange Commission and Ripple Labs to determine 3 mutually convenient days for a potential settlement. So basically what they're saying is that there's a lot of clutter in the court system right now. We don't need this in here. There seems to be a narrative here coming in from a district court, that being Torres, that has already got a judgment in place, and that's basically what Judge Netburn is asking for. So she goes on to ask right here, reportedly ordered both Ripple and SEC find 3 mutually convenient dates for this settlement if they believe it would be productive at this time. So she's trying to get them to move to that level. It's very possible it could happen. We'll see. I'd love to get your feedback. Drop some comments down below. Let me know if you think that Ripple will settle under the guise of the securities violation that they did get an order on, and how you think that might play out. I'd love to get your feedback on that. One other thing that is in here is the proposal of the scheduling. A settlement conference signifies a chance for both parties to resolve the conflict without moving the case forward to trial. So this is another big advantage, I think, that would clear the slate. But does the SEC want that to happen? That is my question. And are they looking at other alternatives here to continue to throw wrenches into the crypto engine of what's happening? I'd love to kind of see how this plays out for sure. All right, so I want to jump into 2 more clips here. One is on decentralization and then kind of the future. Listen in.
Republicans on the House Financial Services Committee have put forth a discussion draft on a framework to regulate crypto. The biggest point is that they would have a decentralization test to decipher whether a token is a security, a commodity, or both. I'm curious what you think about these principles, especially the decentralization test.
Jennifer, we are asked by members of Congress, both the House and the Senate, on a regular basis to look at their various pieces of legislation, and we generally give them our feedback directly rather than through the interviews on the.
So decentralization, good idea, bad idea in general?
Yeah, I'm going to again. I'm going to save our comments on any draft legislation for our members that are asking us directly. Whomever Satoshi was, this field is actually quite centralized. Around each of the tokens, there tends to be a group of entrepreneurs, and you can find a website and you can look, and there's maybe a Twitter account and somebody that might even have a name of a CEO or CTO, Chief Technology Officer. Around the platforms, they're quite centralized as well.
All right, so as you can see, he's really struggling with that statement, and also because it will and could be really kind of the path forward of how he's dealing with Congress and the policymakers, because this is all going to come down into what is decentralized, what's not, what is a security, what's not, does it meet the Howey test? That's going to be a new ruling. But I think a lot of this really puts the SEC in a bad situation. You kind of see it in his face and how he's answering the question here. And I think it's a big one, because it really does put a lot of struggle for them to prove that this actually is a security. This is a new time, and because it's a new time, we're looking at a whole new set of rules and laws that need to play in the case, and they're still trying to apply old 1930s regulation. Let's go to this next clip on the next 6 months.
The first half of this year was marked by more than a dozen enforcement actions by the SEC when it comes to the crypto space. Should we expect more of the same in the second half of the year? What can we expect from the SEC when it comes to regulating crypto in the second half of the year?
I think over the last 6 years, we at the SEC have brought, settled, or litigated somewhere close to 150 actions in the crypto field. So I don't know what the next 6 months will hold, and I'm not at liberty to speak about any one enforcement action. But we're really focused on protecting the integrity of the markets, the investing public, capital formation, as I said earlier, and trying to bring greater compliance within this field.
All right, so another thing that you think about with the fact that this ruling came down, and that the SEC should have kind of understood the framework of how all of this came about, where a judge actually entered the ruling. And that is the impact on Ripple's business. Now, when I say Ripple's business, it really is on the Ripple holders. If you look at this tweet here, Ripple should countersue the SEC for a loss of earnings. And it's not that the XRP was a loss over there. It was the idea that Ripple in its entirety was being held up from advancing forward, partnership deals like that, all of which because of this case that ended up being kind of a nothing burger, because there are scenarios where many of these situations where you do have securities violations all the time with companies, they don't end up doing something right, or there's not a filing in place. They get a ruling, they get a fine, and they move forward. But the impact on the secondary market, which is the one that I think impacted the greater good here of Ripple, this is one that I think the SEC, if they continue to kind of mess around here, is they're going to end up in court themselves for afflicting harm on investors, being consumer investors, as well as companies that are out there trying to make good on the next level. I want to just to remind you guys, this is the time frame before Gary Gensler gets the boot. Still 1,052 days, even though I think he's becoming more of a political liability right now. Obviously, we've seen the situation with Ritchie Torres and his pressure. I think he's going to become a very focal point on how Gensler continues to move on. Now, the big next news item is going to be Coinbase. And of course, Coinbase, the challenge here is that will they actually win this case now based on a lot of these new findings? Because remember, they're still a securities, or an exchange, not a securities exchange, but a digital asset exchange. That makes a big difference here. Coinbase Earn is particularly vulnerable, though, to being defined as a security. And I'm not sure that they're not ready to give that up, because they've already shut it down in several states. A couple of things to note here. District Court ruled that Ripple's XRP token is not a security itself, but at the last, it also ruled that XRP can be classified as security when it's in certain transactions. Much like anything in business, if there are certain transactions, if you put out and there's some sort of investment contract that you're expecting to see a profit, then that is a security. But in the scenario of like this, it not necessarily is. The security product through which Coin offers staking rewards to retail customers appears particularly vulnerable to being defined as security within these contexts, meaning you're expecting to see value exchange and come back to you. The commission arguments could gain support if any or all 10 states that initiated proceeding against Coin for operating illegal staking programs affirm that the facilities and security offerings were there. That is itself real, and I think most likely we'll see Coinbase give up the idea of staking, at least in the framework that it is right now. There may be some other creative ways in which they could do this that might change it, but right now this is where I think that may end up falling. And a couple of points that I want to hit on this is a couple of Twitter. Yeah, here we go. This is Ryan Selkis. This was kind of interesting the way his analysis is. SEC attacked Ripple, lost. Attacked Grayscale, losing. Attacked Coinbase, gonna lose. SEC whiffed on Celsius, which was a problem. They let that one happen, didn't realize it was going on. FTX, of course, was already kind of in bed with the SEC, and FTX, of course, you know, absolute worst black eye in crypto history. I would say, you know, next to Luna, maybe the worst. Genesis is accused of fraud, and then perhaps the agency is still relevant for stocks, but not necessarily objectively useful when it comes to crypto. And I agree 100% with Ryan Selkis here. That's Masari, founder. And the reason is that, again, you're applying such an old framework to a new evolution. And the biggest issue here is that we don't even know what we don't know yet, meaning how we're going to see how this technology moves forward, how it changes all sorts of things in terms of value propositions, trading. There's just so many things in terms of tokenized assets that are going to really change the future here. All right, so moving into another tweet here from Metal Lawman, which he's been on our show before. A couple times we broke this down. He was digging deep into the transcript of the pre-motion conference in the SEC versus Coinbase. One of the favorite quotes from the judge: what's the difference between those that are securities and those that are? And how has that been communicated by the SEC to the investing public? This is another problem that I see. Further into this, obviously persuaded by the absurd answer, the judge tries again. I'm just trying to figure out how folks involved in the industry can know that a particular crypto asset with which they are involved in is or is not going to be found at some later date by the SEC to be a security. So I think the judge already is showing a little bit of frustration in even this case because of the framework in which the law is set up, which again, remember, making it law in Congress, getting our policymakers to truly pass this in, whether this happens this month or further, is really what is going to give these judges new teeth and the ability to truly get rulings on this and get some precedents set. I want to go to another clip here. This is Gensler on Coinbase talking about this. Listen in.
Coinbase is already relisting Ripple. A lot of these crypto exchanges feel like this was a real win for them, that the tokens that they list on their exchanges are not securities based on this ruling. So what do you say to them? You know, are you concerned about potential precedent that this could set, especially for other charges that the SEC has brought against other crypto exchanges?
Look, again, Jennifer, you're asking good questions, but there's ongoing litigation with regard to a number of these crypto platforms.
So it sounds like it's still sort of an open question. I wonder, there's been some confusion that's been generated from this. Does it make you reconsider writing customized rules for crypto?
Again, it's too early. This was like 3 business days ago. But I would note, the agency has rules on the books right now. It's about full, fair, and truthful disclosure if you're raising money from the public and the public's anticipating profit based on the efforts of others. That's why Roosevelt called it the Truth in Securities Act. There's rules on the books about what it means to be a securities exchange, what it means to be a broker, an investment advisor. There are rules on the books.
All right, so I think this gets into a lot of detail around this. It's already, I feel, a losing cause when you just look at other marketplaces out there where assets are sold on, and there's an expectation of profit. You know, this could go into watches, all the way into eBay. Any marketplace really could apply to this. So I think this is a losing case for Gensler, again, with what you see here with Torres on what she has determined as a digital asset versus a security. But it all boils down into, will Coinbase win this? And if Coinbase does get a hint of a win here, it is going to kind of set things up in a very, very positive mode. The question is speed on how they go into this before the next bull run and before the next halvening. All this will apply. I want to jump to a crypto news article here. Coinbase CEO Armstrong set to meet House Dems for discussion on crypto legislation. Again, this is, in my opinion, is a good preemptive strike, and timing is really important for this because he's meeting with a new Democratic coalition. This is a big one. We'll focus on discussions surrounding crypto legislation, including topics like taxes, national security, privacy, and climate. All these will be good because he'll be able to truly dispel a lot of the problems. The meeting is now scheduled for Wednesday. This is a huge date. Remember, and it's timing. Again, date of this meeting to the time in which it hits the floor in the House, these laws or these potential bills that could become law. And that to me is a really good thing because it's going to be fresh on the lawmakers' minds, and it's also going to be fresh in terms of them understanding how all of this is truly impacting the future of so much within the crypto industry as a whole. Now, I want to kind of wrap up here on a couple of points. And this one here, of course, let me clear something on. All right, there. Let's go to this one right here. This is a block article talking about Cathie Wood's ARK investing, selling more Coinbase shares worth $26 million. Just so everybody's aware, there's a couple of things that play into this. Those shares, $26 million on Monday, this fund manager's third sale of Coinbase shares. There's a reason for this. It is not that Coinbase is not in her perceived blue bag or, in the bag she wants to hold. It is a situation where ARK simply has too much weighted assets in their portfolio, and that's something that really applies. If you look at ARK's portfolio layout right here, you'll see that Coinbase is number 2 right here, which has a weighted asset ratio of 8.79%. So this is really just to keep it under the guise of the rules within an investment community like this of not being overweighted in any particular asset for exposure. So, and we do know she's reducing her Tesla shares, obviously Tesla being her number 1 position. A lot of this, though, is starting to convert over into things like Meta and some of the others that are within this ARK investment. So if you're following any of those out there, it's a good one. Here was just some points. ARK writing down Twitter, stake by 47, but Cathie's still bullish on long term. They're struggling, this is being Twitter, struggling a little bit with debt and ad revenue, but I think that's going to change over time. They are looking this as kind of a write down, but there's some problems there. I do see more of this as a shuffling of Cathie Wood's current portfolio and starting to move into other assets, whether it's Meta or others. She likes the Threads thing because she thinks it's good for Twitter. And the reason is stake reduction should not become a surprise given that her funds constantly update internal valuations of private companies. She added, I would love to get more stock, meaning the Meta stock, at these price levels, actually, but no one wants to let any go. So that tells you something. And that's been something we've talked about for a while here, at least on Meta. It's one of our stocks that we do hold. So interesting stuff out there right now. Again, all of this is intertwined. And what I mean by that is Coinbase, the future of crypto, how the SEC is playing into this, and the ripple effect that has caused all of this to essentially reignite what is happening in the crypto space. If you're new to this sector, maybe you're just now kind of investigating how crypto works or what you might get into, or the Bitcoin, Ethereum, or altcoins, you really need to get your head around this historical battle that has been happening over the past few years, because this date in time is a very significant one. There's this 60-day range here of both the Ripple ruling and the potential of the crypto legislation that is now hitting the House floor. All of that is very critical moving into an election year. This is interesting times. So make sure and just be ahead of that. It is one of the things that we, of course, believe are going to be huge in terms of driving Bitcoin and other assets to a next generation top level. Of course, Bitcoin to 1.5 million. Cathie Wood says her confidence has increased. This was her bull case, just so everybody's aware. And we've done a couple of breakdowns on this because there is kind of a bear case, kind of a moderate case, and then the bull case. And their bull case thinking at 1.5 million. Best case is 625. That's the mid-range. So still very, very solid. ARK also has experienced positive inflows since July after significant outflows in 23. That may indicate that we're going to see a much softer landing That's good because there's a lot of capital that is still sitting on the sidelines, guys. Where will that capital go? Will it continue its way into the tech stocks, or do we see some potential opportunities of it moving into crypto? Last up here was Wood's conviction in Bitcoin as a hedge against counterparty risk, combined with her strategic investment in laggards, offers a glimpse of her forward-thinking and aggressive investment strategy. And we break down a lot of what Cathie's doing all the time here on the show. If you guys are not part of our Diamond Circle, make sure and jump in. It's one of the best places you can get additional content, more research. It's also where I do additional clips, and it's all free. All you have to do is click the link down below. If you guys want to reach me, it's out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.